1 year later, Zach Goodall,
Right.
Sports Illustrated, all Gators. How's it going, brother?
It's going great. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah.
You wonder what the exact opposite of Shane looks like. Here he is, the man with the golden hair, Florida fan.
You guys, it means the world to me that you guys like this because I don't get enough compliments on it. I got to admit, I've been growing it for about 2 years and no one says anything. So,
Well,
thank
it's crazy. Growing up, I had hair, but I always kept it short because of football and stuff like that. And if I knew that there would be a day I'd no longer have it, I would have had yours.
That's my thinking. That's exactly what I'm doing. I cut it short for like 10 or 15 years of my childhood, and then I was like, what am I doing, man? I'm not going to be able to.
Let it go.
Yeah, have some
absolutely.
fun. Enjoy the summer.
Well, last season I was high on the Gators. I voted them second in the East. You said, what in the hell are you doing? Now I'm low on them. I think I'm going to, we haven't officially voted, but I'll probably put them sixth in the East. That's where I'm planning on voting them. Am I wrong again? What's your read on Billy Napier year two?
I think you're right. I mean, I don't know exactly where I'll put them yet. I'm honestly a little behind myself when it comes to putting together my vote, my ballot, just across the board. But one thing I know is this Florida team, and they improved. They've talked about improvement, adding a lot of depth across the board compared to last year. But they also lost a lot. This is a team that has. Everyone looks at Colorado, right? Like that's the example of attrition right now. But Florida's quietly one of the most active teams across the board in adding and losing talent over the past year and a half. They have totally revamped this roster. I think this offseason they have a total, including walk-ons, of 46 new faces on this roster. So even if it's better, right? Even if the talent's improved, even if you've got a lot more depth, that's going to take a lot of time to come together. And then you look at the schedule. I mean, it's daunting. It gets more and more daunting every year with the way they've been building it. I'm in wait-and-see mode. I believe that that there's potential for this roster to be better, especially long-term. But right now, I need to see it.
Yeah.
Now, there's two kind of camps when it comes to Anthony Richardson with Florida fans that I'm seeing. One is very inconsistent. And if we can get more consistency out of Graham Mertz or whoever the quarterback is, maybe this offense will improve. But also you hear, well, my God, I mean, they were not great last year, obviously, but they could have been a train wreck without him.
Right.
Because he could take over a game, and he did it from time to time. Where do you line on that? What do you think is more accurate to say, that maybe they can get a little bit more consistency, or like the bowl game? I mean, they were in real trouble without him.
That's the thing, is you look at that, and the offense was anemic. Like, when Anthony Richardson went out there and had bad games last year, they were still ultimately in it because he could do things that the 21 other players on the field couldn't do.
Yeah.
Jack Miller couldn't do that, and they scored 3 points just by God's mercy by the end of that game to extend their scoring streak. But I don't know. You would hope that more consistency would help. Their game plan is very old school. They want to run the ball, and they want the passing game to kind of work in tandem with that, and you need consistency in the passing game to make that work. And Richardson didn't necessarily provide the consistency, but what he lacked again was the explosive plays. If he's in trouble, he can get out of it, and I don't know that Graham Mertz has proven he can do that. So it's another one of those things. Maybe a change of scenery will be good for him. He's obviously experienced. He will come in and know how to at least do the easy things. In terms of leading a team, but it's still wait and see for me at this point.
He kind of had I don't know, it gave me the impression that there was a little bit of a quarterback competition going into camp here. So if you were to guess who's the starting quarterback at Florida week one and who's the quarterback at the end of the season, is it the same guy? Is it Mertz, or are we going to see two different dudes here?
I think it'll be Mertz week one, almost guaranteed. Last year when I looked at it with Anthony Richardson and with the compliments he got from day one, Billy being able to come in, see him throw, and it was the best night of sleep he ever had, apparently. Like, there was no way he was ever going to get benched. And some Florida fans raised that point. They said, should we make a change? Should we see what else we have? It's never going to happen. Whereas we're in the middle of July now, and we still have no clue, by the word of the head coach, who is going to start at quarterback for Florida. Again, I do tend to think it's Mertz, but if you're not confident enough to come out and say, this is our guy, the guy that we did all this work to go and acquire from the transfer portal, as they've said too, makes me think you're just not as confident in what you got at that point. So I don't know. By the end of the year, it could be someone different.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a guy that likes to troll. I don't know if you've noticed, but I swear this is not a troll question. Someone posed it to us earlier. How many players on this Florida roster would start at Georgia? And I was struggling maybe the running backs. Is there anyone else, do you think?
I think the running backs would contribute, but even there, it's like for as long as football's been around, Georgia's been churning out the top running backs, so it's even hard to say. I think you can make arguments for specific players rather than going unit by unit, and even some of them, it's still kind of up in the air because I would take the potential of some guys on Georgia's roster compared to what's been proven by some players on Florida's roster. But there are a couple. I think you can make the argument that there are some blue chippers like Austin Barber, rising junior tackle. I think he'll be one of the better players on this team. A couple of acquisitions from the portal like a Cam Jackson from Memphis. Lindell Hudson, offensive lineman from FIU, was actually someone that had gotten a lot of hype about a year ago. He was looked at as a potential Power 5 transfer, but an injury sent him back. And Napier brought up this point today, too. I think he said, something like 10,000 snaps or whatever. They have a lot of proven players to some degree on this roster now, and ultimately that should raise the floor in some capacity, right? You would think. I just don't know what it does to the ceiling.
Yeah. Now, someone that follows the Gators as closely as you do, I mean, when you get to talk to the players at an event like this, I love to ask the guys that cover the teams intimately, did you learn anything from the players specifically that you may have picked up on that, the general SEC fan would overlook?
I think they've really honed in on this idea of blocking out outside noise. And that's cliche. That's what every coach aspires for. That's what everyone wants. But if there's one thing that Billy Napier's really focused on, it's this environment, it's this culture, it's the people first. When he was talking about recruiting earlier today and how he'll put the player experience up against any school, he's meant that. I've been pretty amazed by the amount of focus he's put into that, because at the end of the day, if I'm a football coach, I'm just kind of putting my focus into the X's and O's, but that's why I'm not paid to do it. But he's put a ton into that, and I think we've started to see, at least on recruiting, that there have been some rewards. Players are buying into that. And some of these veterans now that have been in the system a year, that came back for another year despite how last year went, you can really see them starting to accept that message.
Mike's usually editing me anyway. So I do want to ask, because expectations, the recruiting trail, because I've been there. Tennessee, I'm a Tennessee fan.
Right.
We've had some bad years, but we always had sometimes those recruiting classes to look forward to. Vegas does not have Florida Gators winning 6 games. So let's just pretend that's what happens and Florida misses a bowl game here. Are you worried about coaching? Are you worried about losing some of these recruits, anything like that?
I think they absolutely should be. Whether or not they are, I think, is probably a different question, because they're so bought into what they have going off the field, what this environment is, what their NIL changes have been. I mean, that was something Billy Napier said today about the new group that they have, and thinks that they seem to have a lot of confidence in the way they are going about this player acquisition business, to where maybe that isn't as important as years past, but I don't know. If I were a player and I saw Florida go 3 years in a row with a losing season, I would be turned off. I get it. There's a lot, and this is, again, my perspective. I wouldn't necessarily get it as I'm not in their shoes, but it's simple enough to me that just win your games. That should be the selling point. There's so many different things that go into it. I get it, but that's what it comes down to, and that's I'm sure a lot of these kids will evaluate that.
One of the biggest controversies I'm seeing online too is stadium renovations. So what's your thought of losing seats?
It would change things. It would change just how special an environment this is. Now, granted, it's becoming normal in a sense. You see it across, obviously, a lot more pro sports in the renovations, but we're seeing it trickle down to the college level as well. Florida fans are not pleased with the idea of losing 15,000 seats. I don't think they're pleased with the idea of losing 5. And I get that much. But there are, at the same time, improvements that are definitely needed within that stadium. I think the concourses need to widen. They definitely need to modernize just the ins and outs, the technical aspect of running a stadium, because it's clearly not been worked on in some time. But I understand the frustration about actual structural changes at the same time, too.
Yeah, it's been pretty hot this week.
Yeah.
I get it. I was again, a Vol fan. When we lost our seats, that's the first thing I thought of, man. I'm used to that big number.
Right.
But I'm going to tell you, when you're hanging out in it wasn't so bad.
I would hope Florida fans will look at it the same way when that time comes, because they will grow to appreciate the perks.
Yeah.
Can you have ever imagined the last couple of months, the quarterback issues that Florida had with, maybe Anthony Richardson going pro. That's not an issue. You like that, particularly him going so well. But had he come back, the narrative would be completely different. The Rashada thing, of course. The Austin Simmons thing, of course. The transfer portal, hit or misses depending on who you believe. I mean, if they can't get the quarterback right, I don't know if Napier's going to make it. Is that a strong statement?
I think they are all in on this upcoming quarterback, DJ Lagway. I think it's DJ Lagway or bust at this point, which probably not the best position to be in when it's all said and done. You put all your eggs in the basket of a rising senior in high school, entering your second year as an SEC head coach. It's a lot, but it speaks to the issues that you spoke about with Richardson declaring, which I really think was a foregone conclusion by early last November. I think that it was always going to happen. We very clearly knew we had a special talent on our hands there. The Jaden Rashada situation, that made them a total joke. It led to, in fairness, I think a lot of motivation to get things right, get recruiting, especially that position, figured out long term. NIL, obviously. Jalen Kitna and Marcus Stokes are another two that it's obviously it gets easy to remember these guys because of how many different instances they've had. I think Napier said in January or February they evaluated 24 different quarterbacks from the portal and landed on Graham Mertz, to the reaction that obviously it's gotten right or wrong. He wasn't necessarily the best quarterback in the portal. So a lot of concerns, a lot of reasons, a lot of swings and a lot of misses. And I understand their confidence. I think DJ Lagway is a special player, but it's a difficult position to be in, for sure.
Do you think it's fair or unfair that some people, myself included, I could be transparent here, I got Graham Mertz as the 14th best starting quarterback in the SEC. Is that fair or not?
I don't necessarily think it's unfair. He's not proven to be anything in the SEC at this point. You've got all these concerns coming in about his consistency at ultimately a bit of a lower level of football. And I don't see anything really that has made a case for him to rise up quarterback rankings necessarily. Now, do I think that his experience can go a long way for this team? Again, sure, and I think that this offense may also be a bit better suited to his skill set because it's a bit more minimalized. I think it's a relatively simple offense that relies on running the ball. He knows a thing or two about that from his time up in at Wisconsin, but I would understand putting him in the bottom tier at the very least for now.
I like to bring it up a notch here.
I was thinking I'm about to start crying here.
Yeah, I know. I think my eyes are watering over here thinking about the next Florida coach. But let's be optimistic here. Let's say the stars do align. Let's say Mertz is the guy. What else needs to happen for Florida to break through and be competitive? Because we're all talking about that third spot in the. I think a lot of people, I don't know if you've done your poll yet, but a lot of people have Georgia first in the East, Tennessee second. I think that's the common census here. But that third spot, what would it take for Florida to get that third spot in the East?
You got a pair obvious jump at quarterback again, like you said, with I think specifically a jump at safety and on the defensive line for two reasons, I should say. Defensive line depth has just been abysmal for several years. I think that's the biggest reason why Florida's defense has been the way it's been. Under-recruited, not up to SEC par in terms of size, strength, and speed. And also I think the previous coaching staff kind of just came in with, and this applied generally across recruiting boards, with a lack of planning at each position. Florida's this staff, if I'll give them credit for their recruiting, they've come in and said, hey, this is our board at nose tackle. This is our board at 5 technique. This is across the board, we've got this. And the last staff was kind of just like, that defensive lineman wants to come here, we'll take him. This one wants to come. As a result, we've seen that Florida's defense has been Swiss cheese against the run for several years as a result.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason I bring up safety play, even though it's not necessarily as concerning with depth, is it's just been so underwhelming for a few years. And you pair that with this scheme actually treats its safeties like middle linebackers. They are essentially signal callers. The Austin Armstrong, formerly Patrick Toney defense, obviously every level has to communicate a lot, but the safeties, in addition to having to be good, which, again, haven't been really that good in the past couple of years, but they are in serious leadership roles. And so generally, quarterback will make or break the team. I think that's true just about anywhere you look. But the next biggest thing for Florida is its defense, and those are the two positions that have got to make the big jump in order to compete.
Yeah.
All right, let's get an upset too. Let's get Florida fans hyped up here. Game most likely to go the Gators' way that maybe the odds makers don't. And I'm thinking at Utah, the opener. That'll be tricky. Tennessee at home.
Tennessee at home was probably what I was going to say.
And maybe at Kentucky. Which one of those three? And you could say all three if you want. Or most likely be upset in the Gators' favor.
I mean, even now, still, I go into looking at this schedule with viewing as though Florida is an underdog in a lot of these games, those three in particular. But probably Tennessee just because it's at home. I feel as though it's probably that simple. If they can stick to their plan of being able to run the ball, just churn away that clock, make their games this year as fast as possible, in front of a rowdy home environment, that's probably where they've got their best chance. So I'd probably go Tennessee.
Well, I don't know.
I try to be positive. Sticks a dagger right in my
Yeah,
heart.
what the hell?
I said I guess, probably, maybe.
Have you heard the word from Joe Milton? Should we tell? I'm sure that reached Gainesville, didn't it?
What was it? Oh,
He said, "I don't
yeah.
lose in Florida." I mean, the fans have got to be eating that up in the swamp. I mean, it's going to be rowdy as hell down there. I mean, it was already, but that's going to add fuel to the fire, don't you think?
Certainly. But you're right. Florida fans are also just, they're ready. They're rearing for some good football. They're rearing for some good
Absolutely.
right now.
Absolutely. I get it.
Yeah.
Because you realize, as a program that's won multiple 10-win seasons, you forget how good you had it.
Right.
Yep.
Exactly.
But when you do get it back, you appreciate it. So,
All right, Zach, really appreciate you. Before you go, tell the audience, where can they find your work? Where can they follow you?
You guys can find me at Zach_Goodall on Twitter. Read all of my stories over at allgators.com.
I appreciate you, bro.
Thank you,
That
man.
was
Thanks so
great.
much.